Are you coming to the tree where they strung up a man? They say he murdered three. Strange things that happen here. No stranger would it be if we met at midnight in the hanging tree.
Welcome to Strange Things, broadcasting from the Arkanasa Radio Studios in Laredo, Texas. And welcome to the show. I'm your host, Chris James. With us tonight is Chester Moore Jr. Chester is a wildlife journalist. He's the co-founder at Kingdom Zoo Wildlife Center and editor-in-chief at Texas Fish and Game magazine. He's been looking into Bigfoot for most of his life now. Is that right?
Yeah, it's been an interest of mine since I was probably 4 or 5 years old, and been doing a journalistic pursuit of it for at least about 18 years, something like that.
Wow, that's quite a time. How did you get started looking into Bigfoot?
Well, my original interest came on the set. I've always loved wildlife. Like, I think I came out of the womb loving wildlife. And my dad took me fishing and hunting and introduced me to wildlife. And then he had a copy of an Argosy magazine that had stills from the Patterson-Gimlin film. And in the late 70s, there was a lot of Bigfoot stuff on TV when I was a little kid. And then I saw The Legend of Boggy Creek. And then I thought, whoa. They weren't just in California. Maybe they could be here in Texas because that's right on our border. And it always kind of stuck with me. And around 1999, several kind of things converged. And I was about 7 years in my wildlife journalism career, still a young man at 26. And I did some investigations, and it kind of clicked with me that we were probably in the woods at some point and some level in our lives with an undiscovered species that people call Bigfoot or Sasquatch. And, it's not something I do every day, but it's something that's always there in my journalistic pursuits because I always say it's either the biggest mass hallucination in the history of wildlife world or a great fraud or the greatest wildlife discovery waiting to happen.
Yeah, that's pretty much sums it up. You said you went hunting and fishing with your dad. Did he also take you out looking for Bigfoot, or did that just kind of come up on an aside?
No, my dad was into it with me immediately when I got into it later, but we never really thought, because this is pre-internet, no one really thought there's Bigfoot in Texas or Louisiana. It wasn't in the media other than The Legend of Boggy Creek, and it wasn't even really said it was a Bigfoot in the movie. It was like, there was mentioned one time it was a monster. But I put two and two together, and later on I read John Green's Sasquatch the Apes Among Us, and it talked a little bit about that and some other stuff. And I got that out of my library at school, and I was probably third, fourth grade, something like that. And so kind of I was journalistically pursuing, even before I knew what really being a journalist was. I was reading and studying and all that kind of stuff. And then, but my dad and I had an encounter on a creek bottom in Newton County, Texas, and I can't tell you the exact years, probably 83, 84. I was 10 or 11, and we were rabbit hunting at night, and that's legal in Texas, in Texas. You can rabbit hunt at night, and we had our headlamps on, and I had a 410, but that had 12 gauge. And my aunt and uncle were hunting, too, so this is 83 acres in the middle of hundreds of thousands of acres of woods on my aunt's property. And we would cover the fence line and meet up to cover all the rabbits that would be along the fence line. And we converged at this creek bottom, and this thing started just going crazy, just growling and snarling and grunting and inhuman, just crazy sounds. I remember being a kid, Dad, what is that? He said, that must be one of your uncle's bulls hung up in the fence. You better get out of here because he gets mad. And then by the ride home, I'm interrogating my dad, as a good little future journalist would. He goes, that's probably a bear. Bears sometimes cross into Texas and Louisiana. Even then, Louisiana had a fairly substantial black bear population. And I bought the bear thing for a long time until the mid-'90s when I got to work around bears in captivity. And I realized they didn't make any kind of vocalization anywhere similar to that. So that was kind of in the back of my mind, But there wasn't any, taking fast forward. Although my grandmother knew I was into it, and she would drive me up this spot off the bayou in the evening and let me look for Bigfoot for a few minutes when I was a kid. So that was the closest to a Bigfoot hunt ever when I was a kid.
Amazing. How does your family feel towards your looking for this creature? Do they support you? Do they just kind of shake their heads and wish you'd do something else, or how do they accept it?
I'm a force of nature. Okay, like no one tells. It's like they're like, okay, we're just gonna have to. We love Chester. We have to put up with this. Because I'm gonna go do what I'm gonna do. That's just the kind of person that I am. I never really ask anybody for permission. But my family's cool with it because of the reason I pursue it. What I see now in the culture of the Bigfoot world, there's a lot of people who are so obsessed, all they think about, all they do, and that's never been me. I've always been part of what I do. It's part of a pursuit, but it's never consumed like my life. And I think if it did, like a lot of other folks I've met and come across, they'd probably be concerned. But pretty much everyone in my family knows that, that there's something out there, either by the proof we found or just because they know people who've encountered things, stuff like that. So my dad, man, God rest his soul, he died 3 years ago this December 27th. He was the biggest Bigfoot supporter and fan on the planet. And every time I go out in the woods, I think of him.
Mm-hmm. What's your most bizarre encounter while you're working out in the field?
Man, that's a good question. The one I told you about early on was interesting, but it was I don't remember dates, but I remember this date, August the 20th of 2000. Me and my dad and Bobby Hamilton from the GCBRO / now, I guess, Killing Bigfoot TV show were out on a very early expedition. And we heard the exact same noise that me and my dad had heard 15 years earlier and didn't know what it was. And we were on an investigation. And that's the moment it clicked these things were real. Because it was right up to, this isn't one of these whistling sounds and this kind of stuff. I'm talking about full on. If you've ever heard the Sierra sound recorded by Ron Moorhead, very similar to some of that stuff. And matter of fact, some of the vocalizations are spot on with it. But that was the moment that kind of cemented it, and that was really intense. I had rocks thrown at me near Honovia a couple years ago up in Oklahoma. I mean, one of the rocks, big rock, landed right by our feet. It was at nighttime. Had stuff like that happen. There's been a lot of adventures out there. Me and Ken Gerhard, this is probably 14 to 15 years ago, and my friend Patrick Trumbull, who's done some crypto art, and my dad were at a place in North Texas doing an investigation, and we got on top of this huge levee, and we shot a Q-beam light on this lake because it was a drought year, and this was the only big water source for a long, long way. These two twin small lakes, and the lakes were way, way low, and so we're shining that, and I see eye shine. All right, and immediately, whatever it was, it is probably 300 yards away, turned its eyes. Now, deer don't turn their eyes when they're shined. Cattle don't turn their eyes. So I turned the light off for a second and said, okay, so we put the night vision, we had the M3s back then, and you couldn't see nothing that far out, really. And I shined it again. This time it was way up. So it wasn't on the shore. It was way up from the shore. That was that. And we also had growling. I was crawling through the brush at something. We heard growling, and they're trying to get a look. And Ken, I think, has a recording of that somewhere, maybe. I don't know. But there's been lots of adventures doing that. I mean, I've been on Bluff Creek a couple of times in Northern California, the infamous site, the famous site, and just had a lot of crazy adventures out there.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned having a rock thrown at you. Do you know of anyone that's ever actually been hit by a rock? Because I hear the same story many times, but nobody ever says that they actually have been hit.
My friend, I've had sticks thrown at me too, because in the woods about down here, we don't really have rocks.
Yeah.
That happened in Oklahoma. It was a lot more rocky. My friend Patrick Trumbull was peeing in the woods one night and once smacked him in the face with a stick.
Ouch.
It hit him dead in the face.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So that was a unique moment. That's the only one I know of, but Patrick got hit smack. Matter of fact, Ken was with him at the time in that area, and I was on the other side of this road, and they radioed in when it just happened, and I'm like, oh man, I'm missing all the good action.
Mm-hmm. You're missing getting hit with sticks.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you're in the Bigfoot realm, I guess that's a pretty cool thing.
You mentioned at the conference about the howler monkey incident where you were in a conversation of sorts with one. How about telling us about that?
Yeah, that was absolutely crazy. Have you ever heard of howler monkey yourself?
Oh, yes, yes.
Yeah, they're pretty intense. So I'm in Venezuela in 1999. I'm doing freelance story. I think it appeared in Texas Fish and Game and a couple other publications at the time about peacock bass and payada fishing on Lake Guri, which is this 300,000-acre reservoir in the middle of Venezuela. And I'm so excited about seeing all the wildlife, you know. And these howler monkeys are in this cove, and I tell the guide, take me up to the monkeys, and this monkey's sitting probably 30, 40 yards out in the tree, and I'm growling at him. He growls and I growl. So I did a single growl, and he growled. I did 2 growls, he growled. I did 3 growls, and he growled back really loud, and it kind of ended with a high-pitched sound. He got mad, started snapping branches and throwing branches, and then it retreated. Well, the incident on August 20th of 2000 I talked about was kind of the same way, that we were caught completely off guard. We were leaving the property at about 4 a.m., and we put the guns up, we put the lights up and everything. We're literally shaking hands, and this happens, and kind of all hell breaks loose, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And so it was making all these grunts, and I think, man, that sounds very howler monkey-ish, but not a howler monkey. So I grunted, and it stopped, and it grunted. Then I did 2 grunts, and it grunted. Then I did 3 grunts, and it did the same thing, but it went to this high-pitched scream that sounded exactly like a sound you keep hearing being played in the Legend of Boggy Creek, the whoa. And it settled. It came quietly, but it wanted us to know it was leaving.
Mm-hmm.
So it sounded like a bison running through the woods, man. It was just breaking stuff and leaving. So to me, that was where something clicked that it's worth pursuing as a journalist, because it was primate-like behavior. These animals are real. They're obviously not a marsupial.
Mm-hmm.
They're obviously not an arachnid. They're obviously not a bird. They're obviously not a deer. They're a primate of some kind. And so that's my thought. There's something here that's worth pursuing.
Mm-hmm. You don't ever entertain the possibility that they're more than just an ape?
That's a really interesting question. So I came into this thinking it was an undiscovered species of ape.
Mm-hmm.
Because most of the things are ape-like.
Yes.
I mean, go down the line, whether it's a gorilla or orangutan. I think they're probably closer to orangutans in terms of some of the things that happen. But the other side of this, we don't know what their origins are. And my worldview is based on the Judeo-Christian prophetic narrative. And I think there's a chance it's somewhere. Possibly their origin could be that they were what are called Nephilim that are mentioned in the book of Genesis, that they're somehow linked to that. I don't know about them going to time portals and masking and cloaking. I don't really look at that part of it.
Mm-hmm.
But I know that they're very strange, and it's getting harder for me to believe that an ape that's only ape could have eluded us without, someone shooting one and bringing it to, Fox News Central, or someone road killing one or something. Now, as far as someone finding one in the woods dead, I have no problem with that not happening, because A, most people are not looking for dead carcasses.
Mm-hmm.
Something stinks in the woods, the average hiker runs. And secondly, if they are a primate, they're long-lived animals with a small population rate. The chance of finding one is nil, But shooting one getting road killed or something like that, I mean, it's getting harder for me to think it's just an ape, but I'm leaning toward the Nephilim side of the origin. I think they are a natural. I don't think they're ghosts.
Mm-hmm.
I think they're flesh and blood, and I don't think we'll probably ever know. I just think they're weird, they're strange, and they're very, very interesting.
That's a good way of looking at it. I kind of get a kick out of people that will come out and just point to facts, say this is what it is or this is not what it is, when we don't know what it is. So I was
I don't know. I got my ideas, and I think they're pretty. They make a good argument for it. But at the same time, man, I don't think anyone's probably ever going to know.
No, until we actually see one sitting in a room somewhere and get to talk to it, or if it'll talk to us. Way back, I saw an interview with you, and you had a life-sized Bigfoot standing in the back of your den, I believe.
Yeah, man. My dad made that. It was called Boggy. He named it Boggy. It was supposed to be the Legend of Boggy Creek. It was complete with 3 toes.
Do you still have it?
I do. It's
Oh.
actually in the trailer sitting next to me. Our Kingdom Zoo Wildlife Center got flooded during Ike, and it got some damage on it. We're going to repair it, and I'm going to be donating it to Liberty Coleman International Cryptozoology Museum.
Your phone broke up a little bit there. Could you run through that one more time?
Yeah, so it's actually sitting right next to me in a trailer here. We got some flood damage at the Kingdom Zoo Wildlife Center, and it got some damage. We're repairing that damage, and once it's fixed up, I'm going to be donating it to Lauren Coleman at the International Cryptozoology Museum.
He can put it up next to that big one he's got up there now.
Yeah, we're going to have our southern version there. So we're going to have our crazy inbred southern hillbilly redneck Bigfoot. So that's what people used to call it. So we're gonna have that there, and it's going to be giving people a good scare.
You mentioned about the 3 toes. Could you tell our listeners about that? Because there's a few out there that they don't know that there's a difference between Bigfoot from California and Bigfoot from Texas.
Well, there are, once again, we don't know, but the reports in the Pacific Northwest tend to always there have been 6 toes and other stuff, but 5 toes. In the South, in the Midwest and all, it tends to be mixed up. Somehow, there are these giant 3-toed tracks, like the Legend of Boggy Creek, the Salt Monster, allegedly had the 3-toed tracks, and different stuff like that. And, so we used to always joke that they were inbreeding, which is a possibility because that does happen with, primates, problems with digits and stuff, and you start getting inbreeding in there. But we really don't know. Another thing on the Nephilim part of it is, the giant of Gath in the Bible had 6 toes and 6 fingers and 2 rows of teeth.
Yes.
So who knows on that? But it's definitely a phenomenon, and there used to be a real contention. There's still some level from researchers in the Northwest over to here saying, that can't be that, or even close to that can't be real because ours have 5 toes. So I'm like, once again, we just don't know until we get that sucker up and look at him and check his feet out,
Yeah. Well, I've known some people in the past that only had 3 toes on each foot, so it's not impossible. But some people just don't like the idea of things being that unusual.
Well, the ostrich people of Africa, highly inbred African tribe, and their feet look like a bird's foot. Like 2 big, huge toes. It's really crazy looking.
And they're spread out, so they really are distinctive looking.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, how about telling us about some of the big cats that people are seeing here in Texas that aren't supposed to be here?
Yeah, man, that's probably my favorite mysterious animal topic is the great cats. I just have an affinity for wildcats. Closest I have at Kingdom Zoo is a beautiful Bengal cat named Purity. She's snow leopard pattern, clear blue eyes, retains the Asian leopard cat markings of her progenitors, But there are the big cat. The cat issue is widespread because there's a lot of things going on. Let me tackle the cougar thing. Start off with. For years, and to some extent now, officials would not recognize that there were cougars, Felis concolor, also called mountain lions, puma panthers, Felis concolor, east of I-35 in Texas. There are just simply too many in South Texas and the Trans-Pecos to deny it. But they would say there weren't here in the Piney Woods. Louisiana would say the same thing. Mississippi would say the same thing. But the problem is now we have game cameras, and these things are popping up all over America. And the crazy thing, I collect wildlife books. If anybody wants to donate something cool to me, give me your old pre-1980 wildlife books. We collect those. And these things, if you look at some of the ones before the Endangered Species Act, kind of what messed some of this stuff up. And I support the act, but it kind of messed stuff up because once that act came out, and the animal was designated living in a certain range, and the protections like shutting timber down and things like happened with the spotted owl in the Pacific Northwest and to a lesser extent the red cockaded woodpecker in the South, they're real skittish on putting any kind of animal that may be rare in a certain area. And you think, well, how could that affect cougars? Well, in 1991, the Sierra Club had an article in Sierra Magazine, I happened to read when I was a junior in high school, about the eastern cougar, which was a threatened species, I believe. And they considered up into East Texas to be possible range. So that's a possibility. But the cougar, if you look at the old range maps, range from 500 or 600 miles south of the Arctic Circle in Canada, throughout the entire Lower 48, all the way through Mexico, Central America, the tip of Argentina. And so there's no doubt they're around. To say cougars are not around is absurd, although they're not as common as a lot of people act. Now, being a wildlife journalist and having different publications and things, I'm always seeking game camera photos, and I guarantee you in the last year I've seen at least a dozen people send me photos they said were cougars on their game camera that were bobcats.
Mm-hmm.
Most people don't know the difference. I'm talking about hunters sometimes, and they'll argue with me, but it's definitely a bobcat they're seeing. Matter of fact, I've only had, in all the time of doing this, east of I-35, 3 game camera photos that are first-hand sourced that weren't the cougars. The rest are all bobcats with the silver fingers.
I know that mountain lion cougars can be found east of I-35 because I've seen one.
Sure.
It was out.
Me too.
It was east of Texas A&M here in Laredo, and
yep,
they don't know that they're not supposed to be on that side of the highway, I guess.
No, they don't, and they're around, and there's no question about it. The problem is the black cats people report to me, because there are probably more reports of quote-unquote black panthers than there are of standard pony brown cougars. And that presents a problem because the black panthers people see on television and in zoos are melanistic, which is a high level of black pigment.
Mm-hmm.
Leopards are melanistic jaguars. And the majority of leopards and jaguars don't throw melanistic offspring.
Mm-hmm.
So most people that I talk to report seeing a black cat, and they're adamant it was a black cougar. I can tell you unequivocally there are no black cougars. Period. There's never been, in the history of all the ones killed, in Western states, you got to check in your cougar when you kill them. All the ones killed, brought to a taxidermist in a museum, and there's tens of thousands in captive facilities around the world, a single melanistic cougar. As a matter of fact, the cats you see, there are no melanistic lions, although there's some really pretty good Photoshop jobs on Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
There are no melanistic lion. There are no melanistic caracals. The only cats you see with melanism are the ones that are striped or spotted. And so people aren't seeing black cougars. You might see someone, they're dark brown, and at night it looks black, but there are no black cougars. There's a picture from Costa Rica, 1954, black and white, and it looks dark. You can tell, I've shot a lot of photos and rendered in black and white. It was a dark chocolate brown one, and some of the ones down there are that color, but no black ones. So what are people seeing they're calling black panthers? And the fact is, I get a lot of people sending me black panther pictures.
Mm-hmm.
Almost every one I've seen was a house cat. People can't tell scale. When an animal's in a field and they don't know about certain things, most of the ones I have seen are just straight up house cats. Now, do I think that's the answer to the black panther phenomenon? No, but I think it's a part of it. The other thing is there's a cat native to Texas called the jaguarundi. Jaguarundi is supposed to only live in limited numbers in Cameron and Wilson County, right down in the lower Rio Grande Valley of Texas, near Mexico. But they range throughout Mexico into Central and South America. And but I have seen 2 jaguarundis in southeast Texas, about 325 miles north of where they're supposed to be.
Mm-hmm.
And I have photographed them in captivity, and I've actually sat in a room with them, walking on a couch with me on it. I know what they look like. And I have 2 game camera photos sent to me that were unequivocally jaguarundis. One of them was in Grimes County, which is north of Houston, in the Sam Houston National Forest. So I think, and jaguarundis are a smaller cat, but the record jaguarundi was 54 inches from head to tail. They're low slung, but they're dark gray to black, and some of them are brown. And so for someone who doesn't know that such a cat exists, which most people have never heard of the cat, when you see one, it's a black panther. Mm-hmm. So I think that's a portion of the black panther phenomenon in the South. And the other possibility is Panthera onca, my favorite animal in the entire world, the jaguar. Jaguars are native to Texas, actually native ranging all the way into Louisiana if you look at the old maps. course, it's supposed to be wiped out. And for a long, long time, I had a real problem with the Black Panther phenomenon being jaguars because no one was reporting seeing spotted jaguars. And I'm thinking, if these are jaguars, people are going to be reporting seeing regular spotted jaguars. No one was.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I have two different reports. One across the border from me in southwest Louisiana, and another one over here in East Texas with spotted jaguars, and the details they gave were fascinating. I also had another guy who lived in Belize for 20 years, which is one of the strongholds of jaguars, saying that once a month about on the creek bottom behind his house near Monterey, Texas, he would hear a jaguar. And a jaguar makes a very unique coughing type sound when it roars. And he knew jaguar sounds. So that was very fascinating to me. And then I found out that they just discovered that melanism, the thing that makes them turn black, is dominant in jaguars. Most animals, that's recessive, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can't breed them into it necessarily. But it's dominant in jaguars. So what if, of course, when the gun came in, we wiped out everything. We wiped out the whitetail. We wiped out everything. It was a wasteland for wildlife by about 1900 in most of America. It would just wipe stuff out. I mean, there were only 500,000 whitetail in North America in 1900. There are 27 million now. To show you the difference. There are 4 counties in central Texas that have more than 500,000 deer combined. To show you the difference, we wiped everything out.
Mm-hmm.
So if the predator, we had government paid tracking programs, we poisoned them, everybody shot everything they saw, there was no regulations. So of course the predators would be knocked down big time. But what if there were jaguars, and maybe there were a few, and maybe say there's a big melanistic male, and maybe that stayed dominant, and some of the cats people are seeing are jaguars. I've interviewed some people that I do believe have seen jaguars in Texas. And a couple, there's a gentleman not too far from where I live who told me Black Panther report many, many times. And I finally went over there and interviewed him, a proper interview. And he showed me the spot, and he said it was broad daylight. It was coming out near this pond, and right by a bayou, which is a hint because jaguars are very aquatic. They love water. And I love watching the videos, by the way, when they eat caimans and stuff.
Oh, yes. Mm-hmm.
I mean, what an incredible cat. But he said the cat was solid black, and it turned to walk down this line this line of brush by the marsh, and you could see the spots. And I've had several people tell me that. And so that's what happens is these cats are actually a lot of brown with a little more black on their tips. And when they turn a certain angle, they look solid black, and they turn the other way, you can see the spots.
Mm-hmm.
I've sat in front of a black leopard, photographing a black leopard from 3 feet away. And this particular leopard would just sit there and look totally black, and then the clouds would move away, and it would look spotted. Then it would turn its head and look spotted. And it turned back and look solid black. It's just a cool phenomenon. So that's a long answer to say. I think as far as that cat phenomenon in the Texas and beyond, I think there are a lot of answers to what the Black Panther phenomenon could be.
Mm-hmm. It's amazing some of the animals out there that people don't even realize we have in our backyards.
Oh, it's incredible. Wildlife is so resilient in a lot of ways, and there's just all kind of crazy stuff out there. People just don't realize, hey, that can live in my backyard.
Last year at the Texas Bigfoot Conference, you were talking about the coy wolf. Now, how about telling our listeners a little bit something about that?
So, the first article I published when I was 19 years old, 25 years ago in 1992, was about a report of some red wolves. Now, the indigenous wolf to eastern Texas was the red wolf, Canis rufus. There are only 2 types of wolves in the world, the red wolf and the gray wolf. The gray wolf is one most people are familiar with, and there's tons of subspecies around the world, many subspecies extinct, but the gray wolf and the red wolf. The red wolf is intermediate between the larger gray wolf and the coyote. They come typically in a reddish brown coat, sometimes even melanistic and black, sometimes even silver, mainly red. And when government predator control programs were just handling the wolves, and I have records of this from Louisiana where they talked about how many wolves they killed one year, hiring all these new trappers to kill wolves. In the picture is a guy carrying a melanistic red wolf on his back. It's go to the wildlifejournalist.com, and Look, search for wolves in the blind. You'll see that. You'll see that article, that photo. But these animals got really low in number, and then you had the coyote pushing eastward. Coyote is probably the smartest animal in North America, the most adaptable animal, probably definitely the most adaptable large mammal in North America. And other than the rat, I can't think of anything more adaptable than a coyote. And they interbred. And in 1973, when the Endangered Species Act came into play, they were the first large mammal put on the endangered species list, the red wolf. So between 1973 and 1980, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service initiated a captive breeding program. They were going to do the first ever trying to get pure specimens and breed them in captivity. So between that period, they caught over 400 animals in southeast Texas and southwest Louisiana. By 1980, they narrowed it down to 14 animals they said were pure red wolves. And they did this, by the way, not by genetics. They did it by skull measurements of specimens in museums, which is really interesting. Mm. But it's almost a fate thing. Like God had this in his mind when he kind of created my spirit. Is I grew up about 3 miles from one of the spots they caught some of the last red wolves, right down the road from my house. And so they had these 14 animals, and they started a captive breeding program that goes to this day to do a great job with these animals. There have been some released at Alligator National Wildlife Refuge in North Carolina, and they have a bunch of them, kind of a captive gene pool, including the Texas Zoo in Victoria has some down there, and different zoos and things have them. And but there are still animals out there that look like pure red wolves. There's still a jury on, are they pure red wolves? I've got game camera photos. You can go to thewildlifejournalist.com and click on the top link and click red wolves and coy wolves, and they're animals that look exactly like the ones in the breeding program. So they're probably some coyote in them, but they're very wolf-like. And I always say, if it looks like a wolf and howls like a wolf, it's probably a wolf.
That's a pretty good supposition.
Yep.
How many wolf reports do you get each year?
Oh, man, I get tons of wolf reports. I mean, a lot of game camera photos of wolfy-looking animals, coyotes that look a little more wolf-like than normal. But I've seen many animals. And the other thing is, it's not just Texas wasn't just inhabited by Canis lupus, the red wolf. It's inhabited by Canis lupus, the gray wolf. There was the Mexican gray wolf, also known as the Lobo wolf, that lived in the kind of down where you were, all the way across the state, going west. And there was the Texas wolf, Canis lupus monstrabilis, that went extinct in 1937, officially deadly. And it was a big wolf, and it was in the central part of the state, coming down from Colorado, Kansas, all that. And then you had the prairie wolf. So you also had at least three subspecies of gray wolf, and then red wolves converging into these areas. And there's no doubt of hybridization, because there's some gray wolf-looking animals that I've seen before as well. So Texas has a really rich history in wolves that, but the cattle, the mohair, the sheep industry, all that stuff just wiped them out. That's kind of what happened to those guys. But by the way, the Mexican gray wolf is the most endangered subspecies of gray wolf, and they're in a captive breeding program too. And I know a guy who's used to do government trafficking, does private contracting, been doing it for 50 years, and he told me he saw a Mexican gray wolf in Alpine, Texas, about 5 years ago. So that's kind of cool.
Yeah, amazing.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about the Kingdom Zoo. Where did you come up with the idea?
All right, man. This is definitely a God-worthy thing, So we have the Kingdom Zoo Wildlife Center, and it's part of our Kingdom Zoo outreach. And our mission is to bring the redeeming love of Jesus Christ to hurting children through wildlife encounters. We have found that wildlife inspires kids in animal encounters. There are soldiers that come back with PTSD. They have these comfort dogs, and kids with autism work with ponies and horses and donkeys and all kinds of stuff like that. So we've done this with animals, and we use it to outreach and evangelize, but also to work with hurting children. We have the Kingdom Zoo Wildlife Center, and we also have which got moved, and we're in a new facility right now after the flood. We also have a thing called Eden Outreach. That's kind of what we're doing with the animal therapy kind of stuff. And then we have another thing called Wild Wishes. And Wild Wishes is probably the program that we get the most interest in, because it involves granting exotic animal encounters to kids who have a terminal illness and have lost a parent or have lost a parent or a sibling. And it's a pretty serious program, and we've seen incredible results. 5 years ago, I had one dog. Now we have 95 species of exotics. It's pretty cool.
It's growing.
Yeah, man, big time. You know, we're getting to the point now where we're going to be raising funds for what we're going to call the Garden of Eden Sanctuary, and we're going to be doing some really specialized animal therapy and working with the kids, you know, and, you know, I was just a sinner saved by grace, and I see how his love impacts children. And, man, when a kid, my wife and I've always loved kids, and when you have a kid that's been traumatized, you know, being able, and people ignore kids. Kids are treated like animals in our culture. You know, as long as you stay over there, kind of by your cage or on your leash, and you take your meds and you do whatever, if you have, you're okay. But the minute you have a problem, well, you're a problem to me. And we got to stop that. You know, we got to start realizing that these kids are going through hell, a lot of them, you know, and we see it. We hear stories that would just chill you to the bone. But because of our love of Christ, because these animals and what the Holy Spirit can do through us, and when I could take a girl that's been tortured in her life, literally, and I can sit our wallaby in her lap and give it a bottle, and that kid just becomes a kid again, it's all worth it.
You were talking about taking a kid out on a Bigfoot hunt. And tell us about that one.
Yeah. So our third wish is a little boy named Jackson. Jackson is like a major Bigfoot fan. And so one of my dad's last expeditions he did with me, we took him into an area that had a lot of activity. And, you know, when I go out, I don't really expect anything to happen because most of the time it doesn't, right? But I took him to a good spot. I told him the history of the area. Him and a little friend of his Emily went with us, and on Saturday, actually, at an event we're doing. And Emily found a mountain lion track. It was really cool. They found a track, and they capped the track, and it was really cool. And I let out some yells, some gibbon-like yells, and like the Ohio recordings, and something sounded off way in the distance. And they got Jackson heard it first, little boy. He got excited about it. And Jackson just had a real tragic loss in his life. But it was, you know, it could have been a lot of stuff. You know how sound reverberates through a creek bottom. You know, if you don't hear it clearly and it's close, it could be a lot of stuff, right?
Yes.
But he was excited, and we hung out late, and he was starting to bite us. And said, well, we're going to go ahead and pack it in, but what we'll do is we're a long way out in the middle of this place. So we're going to stop at 3 different spots on this distant road we're on call. So we stopped at the first 2, and nothing happened. And then I'm driving out, and I'm tired, and Dad, you promised in 3. I said, oh, I forgot. So I just kind of literally put my phone number in, and we stopped at this one spot. I said, Lord, let there be something here. And I let out a yell, and this thing yelled right back at me, full volume. And it probably, whatever it was, well, I know what I think it was, could have been 50, 75 yards away. And that little boy was just pumped. And it was so cool to see that. And I still see that kid, and still part of our life. And he also got to meet the cast of Finding Bigfoot, the producers who wanted me to be on as an eyewitness on the program, but I didn't want to do that. But I went to the town hall in Lufkin, Texas, and I said, can we take him to meet the crew? You know, that would be awesome for him. And they said, sure, we'd love to do that. But also, you know, management and stuff works sometimes. Sometimes things don't, you know, get communicated. And, man, just as God would have it, man, I'll probably pull up to the building an hour early, and Bobo is sitting on the corner talking on his cell phone. And I said, man, I remember meeting him before he ever did TV years and years ago, one time. You know what I mean? I said, he'll never remember me, but hopefully we can get Jackson an autograph or something. I walk out of the car, and he goes, Chester Moore, it's been a long time. So, and it was so cool. We talked and gave me his phone number to hook up with these kids ever need help. And he got a picture of little Jackson, and he took him in to meet Cliff, who's a really awesome guy. And Renee was a real sweetheart. I think we got to meet Moneymaker too. And it was great, man. So that was kind of people of the Wild Wishes program. It was one of our wildest wishes for sure.
That's amazing. Where do the kids that are participating in your programs, how do you get a hold of them, or how do they get a hold of you?
Many times it's just word of mouth. We hear of situations in the community, but we've done lots of wishes from all over. kind of the Arklatex region. We try to stick in Texas or Louisiana also because it's the closest spot, but we'll reach out to where we can reach out. And people can go to kingdomzoo.com, and they can get information for Kingdom Zoo Wildlife Center. Once again, the Wild Wishes part of what we do is kids who have a terminal illness or have lost a parent or a sibling that will qualify for them. We always ask them like the top 5 favorite animals, and then we ask them to meet one of those. We always give you 5 because they'll ask something crazy like, I want to go to like Komodo and like go ride on a Komodo dragon. We can't do that, but we can do other cool stuff, you know.
That could be a bit hazardous.
Yeah, but they can meet my Savannah monitor Godzilla, and that's pretty cool.
How did y'all survive the hurricane? Did you ride it out, or did y'all pack up and head north?
Well, the thing about the hurricane here is it would just rain. There wasn't no storm surge or anything like that, and we got about 20 inches more rain than they originally forecast for us. And our home didn't get hit, but our Kingdom Zoo Wildlife Center did get hit. And so we're in a new facility now. The Family Worship Center has given us 3 huge classrooms, and we have an outside courtyard, and it's working out good. We're trying to finish. We got most of it finished. Trying to finish our interactive room, but we're working on it.
If folks are interested in either visiting or helping out, how would they go about doing it?
They can go to Kingdom.
You broke up there. Could you say it again? We seem to have lost Chester. Mr. Moore, are you still there? Are you still with us? Well, he was saying if you go to kingdomzoo.com/donate, that's how they get most of their funding. Coffee makes the world go round. And around here, we have the Organic Man Coffee Trike. 4501 McPherson, Suite number 9. If you're not looking for coffee, try their tea. It's the best in town. And remember, life is too short to drink bad coffee. Else on the program.
Sure, I got you.
We lost you just as you were saying how people could get a hold of y'all.
Yeah, you can go to kingdomzoo.com or email me at chester@kingdomzoo.com or Kingdom Zoo Wildlife Center on Facebook.
Do y'all have any upcoming conferences or speaking engagements where people could hook up with you if they're in the neighborhood?
You know, right now we just got, we're going to be at Cornerstone Church in San Antonio, I believe. It's the first Sunday in December. I think that's the 3rd. We're going to be at another church next Sunday in San Antonio again. I got to get the name of that church. I haven't been there yet. What's my schedule? And the rest of our stuff's kind of private events with, with kiddos and stuff like that. Kind of winding down 2017, and then there'll be a lot of stuff coming up in 2018.
How about your Bigfoot or your Wildcat lectures? Any of those coming up?
I don't have any of those scheduled right now. I know some stuff will come up next year. We're going to be appearing at the Southeast Texas Bigfoot Conference. They asked me to speak, but I couldn't commit that early on. And by the time I could commit, they already had it filled up. But I'll be there with the booth and some track and stuff like that. We'll have some really cool, tracks and maybe a new book. There's a Bigfoot book that I wrote 2 years ago, and I've started on the book. I'm going to add some to it, and it'll probably be out by then.
That the Southeast Texas, is that the one in Huntsville?
Yeah, one in Huntsville. It'll be a great conference. It'll be great. It's close to home, so that's nice.
Well, I wish. I thought it was close to home, but it's almost as far for me as Jefferson.
I got you. Well, for me, it's pretty close to home for one of these events. So,
You've written a lot of books about fishing. How about telling us about some of those books?
Yeah, man. I made a good portion of my career writing about coastal fishing. I'm editor-in-chief of Texas Fishing, and I'm very blessed to have that position. And I've got a book called Flounder Fever, about my favorite fish, the southern flounder, Parametheus. We've also written one on speckled trout called Texas Trout Tactics. Got one called Texas Reds. Got a book called Wild about hogs. And we got Texas Waterfowl as well, about my love of waterfowl and waterfowl hunting.
And where would people get a copy of your books if they were looking for them?
You can order them at fishgame.com on Amazon, or also at pick some up at most of the Academy Sports and Outdoors locations in Texas.
I've also seen them at Academy. Not Academy.com, at Amazon.com.
Yeah, Amazon's got the books as well. Yes, sir.
I should know that place. It's the only place that offers my books, but having mind issues here. Your latest book, The Field Guide to Texas Wild Cats.
Yeah.
I had to drive all the way to Jefferson just to get a copy of that thing. Is it available, or is it something that you have to go to your website for?
Yeah, man, that book right now is just available through my personal appearances and stuff like that. But we will have them available online soon as well. Mm-hmm. And it's mainly just something for me to have at the conferences and different speaking engagements. We'll have it online soon, also a Kindle version available too.
I've got to ask this question. I hope you don't mind, but any connection to Duck Dynasty?
No, none.
You have that headband, and every time I see it, I think of those guys.
I was wearing a headband before I ever heard of the Robertson family. The headband comes from years of being in metal bands and stuff. That's more my culture growing up, you know. But I actually got to hunt with them before. Mm-hmm. I went and stayed at Phil's house and hunted with Phil and Jason's son, Jep, who was filming at the time. This is before Duck Dynasty, was just Duck Commander, and ate Miss K's gumbo and got to go duck hunting with the Duck guys. So
that's
that was
pretty
about
cool.
10 years ago.
Any other cryptid creatures in your sites that you look into, say Goat Man, Lizard Man, any of those creatures?
Nah, man. When we start getting into the Goat Man and stuff, it's kind of back. It's not kind of not my thing too much, but I am very interested in reports of large snakes. That's something, because I've got a bunch of snakes, and I'm very interested in these weird reports of large snakes that we get. And abnormal sized rattlesnakes on the East Coast with the Eastern Diamondback, and some of the stuff in the Amazon and things like that. That interests me right there. And also giant hogs. I mean, there are some mutant-sized hogs that are reported and seen and stuff like that, and that's an interest to me too, because I think that's going to be one of our next wildlife things that's going to happen in the cities, because feral hogs have found out, first off, you can't kill enough of them. You really can't control them, and the cities are fertile ground for growing up with no pressure, so all our animal needs to go to maximum size of genetics. They have genetics for it, but you also have to have available space and food and cover. And there's plenty of there in many of our city areas. And I think that people are going to start, some of the biggest hogs on the planet are going to start being like in the downtown Houston area, Dallas, San Antonio, these different places. We're already seeing hogs in those areas, and some big ones, but I think there's going to be some giant ones. And it'll start making headlines about the time one of them eats Fifi the poodle in front of some little old lady. You know?
Yikes. People don't realize how a domesticated hog, when it gets on its own, can go feral in, what is it, like about 2 weeks?
Yeah, it doesn't take long, you know, but there are plenty of wild hogs out there. I mean, I've hunted hogs a lot. I don't hunt much anymore, but I hunted hogs a lot. I've seen some big hogs before, and I've done reports to people. You'd be surprised at just gigantic hogs. And look, a 500-pound hog is huge. Most of the ones that people post on Facebook they shot that were 500 are probably 225. They just look big in the pictures. They don't have a scale. A 500-pounder is a genuine giant, but if you get that 700-800-pound and they're out there, that's a huge animal. And you got to realize at 500 pounds, that's bigger than the average black bear in America, and just 100 pounds shy of the average grizzly. And you're talking about a gigantic animal, potentially dangerous, and smart, super smart animal. And they fascinate me. So kind of on the trail of gigantic, huge hogs out there. I'm not talking about one that somebody put on a high fence ranch that was somebody's pet and then they shot it. You know, that happens sometimes, unfortunately. I don't even think against them killing the pig, 'cause you can eat the pig. That doesn't bother me, you know. It's just when they act like it was a wild pig. That bothers me, you know. But there are some giant ones out there roaming around, and and there are still people who have hogs on open range. That are essentially like like a Duroc or one of those kind of breeds, like a big red Duroc, and they're essentially wild animals. But genetically, they regularly get 600, 800 pounds, and you put them out in the wild very long, baby. That's a wild hog out there. I found hog tracks on the edge of the Sabina River. This is probably 15 years ago, and these tracks were probably 6 inches long.
Yikes.
Yeah, and I have a feeling it was one of those open range domestics,
Yeah.
pretty close to some agriculture, but I don't think it felt any more comfortable if that had been 5 a.m. you walking out, out there in the morning going to a dead blot and running into that guy point blank range.
That would be a lot of bacon to run into in the dark.
Yeah, baby. No question.
You have your own radio show. Mention something about that to the listeners.
Yeah, thank you. I've been doing more outdoors on this 560 KLVI out of Beaumont for 18 years. I've done about 600 or 700 broadcasts, and still going strong. And you can listen on the line via the iHeartRadio app, or go to klvi.com. Or if you're in the Southeast Texas, Houston area, or you're over in Lake Charles, Louisiana, you can listen on AM 560, 6 to 7 p.m. Friday.
That sounds good. Any advice you could give to anybody looking into either doing cryptozoology, Bigfoot, whatever hunts, or just somebody who wants to get out in the woods and see what's out there? Anything you could pass on to them?
Yeah, the number one thing is do it for fun. Don't do it for discovery. Don't do it to prove somebody wrong. Don't do it to validate yourself because you saw things. I've seen it ruin people's lives. Do it for fun. It's a fun thing to go out and pursue mystery. That's a lot of fun. So always do it with a fun attitude. You're not going to change the world out there, but you're probably going to do some encounters that you'll never forget. And you'll live with you'll have the rest of your life and it'll enhance your life. So do it for fun. Always let that be the epicenter of this stuff. Don't take it too dang seriously. And I'm a journalist. I take myself seriously doing stuff. At the same time, man, we're out there looking for something that most people don't think's out there. So let's not act like we're we're writing, some piece of chords. We're out there hunting monsters that may or may not be there, right? So have some fun with it. It's a lot of fun. But as far as a practical advice on anything in research, number one thing is if you want to research mysterious animals, you need to learn all of the known animals first. So learn every vocalization, every track, every stat you possibly can, and that way you can eliminate all the stuff that should be there. And then if you see something that doesn't work, if I've had any success in this field, because I know the native wildlife. I know until the exotics have been introduced. So if you come across, and actually there's a guy that had given me a really interesting report on a Bigfoot expedition out in the hill country of Texas, kind of on the fringe of the hill country, and he's described looking through these Gen 3 night goggles, seeing this thing come up, and it made this really bizarre bellowing sound. And I said, about how tall was it? And he described, he says, probably about 5.5 feet tall. He was really tall ears, and it was really like a werewolf-looking thing through the deal. I said, that was a red kangaroo. And there are a fair amount of red kangaroos that get up to 6 feet tall on ranches out there. And once he went and listened to the red kangaroo's vocalization, that's what he heard. So if you can learn what's out there, it'll help you understand that awesome, exciting, inspiring moment when you do cross the mysterious and go, oh, there may be something to the story.
Anything else you'd like to add before we put this one to bed?
Thank you for the opportunity. I really always appreciate the opportunity to communicate about this. And let's do our best to be good stewards of God's amazing natural resources. There's some incredible things out there in the wild. And to encounter something wild, whether it's a white-tailed deer or one of these mysterious animals that we've been talking about, realize that you're blessed to have seen that. And never let anybody take that away from you. The wild can be a sanctuary from the craziness of life. And always spend as much time beyond the pavement as you can. Bring your family with you. And if you have kids, please bring them with you. You'll definitely have more memories later in your life with your child out there than you do actually looking for the animals. I know my dad, even he's gone now, but my favorite memories out there are things I did with him. So bring your family, enjoy it, and enjoy the pursuit.
Well, this was Chester Moore interviewing from Orange, Texas.
Are you coming to the tree where they strung up a man, the same murdered three. Strange things that happen here, no stranger would it be if we met at midnight in the hanging tree.